Hi everyone! Today I'm going to tell you about my predictions based on astrology for the week of June 24th, 2019. First, let's quickly recap my predictions for the previous week and see what had actually happened. For the stock market, my predictions were that it would go down on Monday, Wednesday and Thursday, and actually on all of those days the market went up. On Monday only very slightly. Then on Tuesday and Friday I thought that the market would go up. It did so on Tuesday, but not on Friday, where it slightly went down right before the close. Some of the general predictions that I had running for some time now had to do with with Uranus in transiting through the sign of Taurus, which has to do with finance, banking, etc. And one of my predictions was that we will hear more about new cryptocurrencies, including those that are special or specific to various social networks. And I specifically called that Facebook will launch their own currency, and we did hear an announcement about their new cryptocurrency called Libra that is to launch in 2020. Another long-term prediction that I had running for some months was about China, that 2018 to 2020 is a period of major reforms in China, or major developments that specifically relate to the Neptunian kind of a theme, which includes navy, oil, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and so forth. And this last week we had an announcement that China apparently had received a delivery of the world's first intelligent mega oil tanker. So it's like a vessel called New Journey, which is a very large crude carrier, which some functions that allow you to allow them rather to automate various management, basically handle things a little bit more intelligent way, such as managing the liquid cargo, assist with the autopilot, and so forth. There was also a prediction that was, again, it's a stunning prediction for 2019-2020, with Pluto and Saturn being conjunct in Capricorn, kind of coinciding with increase of earthquakes, mudslides, problems with old buildings basically being destroyed, geopolitical turmoil, old leaders or government leaders stepping down or being removed, etc. So there were quite a few developments last week in that area, and in particular for the month of June, especially June 10th through the 23rd, I was expecting the increase of these developments because of stressful aspects, transits rather, from Mars and Mercury aspecting Saturn-Pluto conjunction along with the nodes. And so some of the noteworthy events we had were, of course, the increase in earthquakes. There were some 6-point plus earthquakes in the world, as well as two fairly major earthquakes in the US, 4.5 in Kansas and 5.6 in California, which was the largest, I believe, earthquake in California for the past year. And the ones that were 6 plus occurred in Japan, New Zealand, and Indonesia. And this is something to continue. Oh yeah, also in the California, I guess, in June, there was there were quite a few small earthquakes, but because there were so many of them, they were dubbed Swarmageddon in the media. And so one thing to note is that Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn is a slow-moving transit, and it will continue to be triggered by faster-moving planets, and particularly Mars, for months to come. And so the next big, I guess, development similar to what we have right now, and potentially, with the potential increase, will be late October, early November, and then further, March of next year, when Mars will be subsequently squaring and then conjuncting this Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. So basically it will trigger some specific developments that will we will see intensification of earthquakes, geopolitical turmoil, problems with leaders, etc. So speaking of leaders, noteworthy events for last week were that on Monday, former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi died in court. Then we had an attempted coup in Ethiopia, where army chief and several other important leaders have been killed. Coup has failed. And of course, we had escalation of Iran and US tensions, where there was Iran has, I guess, shot a drone. Then US threatened with a military strike, called it off. But then apparently there was a cyber attack was launched. And of course, it is interesting because things that have to do with cyber attacks are sort of astrologically are governed by Pluto, and we do have, like I said, Pluto-Saturn conjunction. So the events that had occurred right now during the subsequent times when we will have similar sort of aspects, similar transits, which, like I said, will be late October, early November of this year, and then March of 2020, we may hear about similar developments. So intensification between, say, of tensions between US and Iran, and some sort of cyber attacks, and more, leaders basically dying, more coups, etc. There are also increased various accidents, and attacks. There was some stampede and panic in the victory parade for Toronto Raptors. There was also a really major fire in Paris, where 3 people had died and dozens were injured. And there was also something that I actually missed, that piece of news earlier, but I have read about it this week, and it's an ongoing situation where on May 2nd in Seattle there was a seasonal leak at the Harborview Medical Center, and basically it's a fairly large, widespread contamination had occurred at that facility, and the situation is ongoing in the sense that the decontamination is continues still, and it has not been fully, I guess, contained, as in the facility still needs to be cleaned up, and the irradiator that has been contaminated needs to be removed. And the president of the University of Washington has called this situation emergency of an extraordinary, severe, and extended nature. So again, this may not have been as big of an event that I was fearing that might occur in June, and the US-Iran tensions have not resulted in a, I guess, really major sort of military escalation. But as I said, this is just sort of one of the triggers, just one of the first transits of Mars to the ongoing, slowly developing conjunction between Saturn and Pluto, and we will see developments of this nature in the upcoming months, where we will have more sort of transits, or transits will of Mars will come back and potentially trigger sort of even more serious events. In the meantime, Saturn and Pluto will be getting kind of closer and closer together over upcoming months and into 2020. Another ongoing aspects that we're experiencing in 2019 is the square between Neptune and Jupiter, and Neptune, of course, being in its own sign of Pisces. This has to do with things like oil, again, pharmaceuticals, which, interestingly enough, that event in Seattle happened to be at the facility that specifically does the research in healthcare industry. And other events associated with Neptune and Jupiter would be shipments of oil, international relationships, immigration, chemicals, wet weather, etc. So we did have, and again, this is something that has been happening on and on. So we had that earlier, and I believe in April, there was a fairly tight square. And then we have this square under Jupiter retrograde in June, and events that happened both in April and June will likely again repeat or continue and culminate in September. So some of and what we had experienced this week may again either repeat or be some sort of like this another variation of it in September of this year. So some of the events that were noteworthy, of course, were the increase in the oil futures due to the US-Iran tensions, specifically like in US, the crude futures were up 10% last week. Then we had Exxon's $53 billion deal with Iraq, I guess, was hit by snags and again affected by Iran tensions, so that I guess has been postponed. And there was also news about massive explosion at the oil refinery in Pennsylvania that was last Friday on June 21st, and that actually resulted on Friday in wholesale gasoline surging almost 4% and in New York. And then there was also gasoline futures for July delivery rose again 4.5% on the same day. So again, that is something we may expect again, a repeat of that in September. Let's see. And other events that relate to like Jupiter Neptune square involved drugs. There was a 1 billion, I guess, load or cargo of some drugs that was basically intercepted, and it was, I guess, on the ship. So again, we have Neptune ship, has to do with, I guess, Navy, of course, being on the water, and drugs. And so, and with that being shipment basically not going through, had to do with, again, square to Jupiter. Jupiter has to do with law, and square has to do with basically things not really moving, the shipment not being able to go through properly. Similarly, the US tensions with Iran put basically some concerns put out, or trigger concerns about the availability of certain shipping channels, you know, the ability to ship oil through the major channel, which if it is interrupted or disrupted rather by the tensions, by potential war, there may be concerns about oil prices going up. And again, in September, there would be another time period to watch for that. So let's see, there are also some news about the corn prices in the US being at 5-year high due to floods. And there was also some sort of a major trial of a Navy SEAL and in the US. And then the news there was that a medic said that they killed somebody. And again, astrologically, I'm just keeping track of sort of relevant news. And again, Navy SEAL, that's Neptune, and medical, again, personnel, it's again Neptune, basically. And the major trial has to do with Jupiter. So again, we're having these sort of news that relate to the theme of, you know, Jupiter square Neptune, which involves either medical facility, Navy SEALs, Navy in general, and some problems like legal problems or problems with shipments. And that's what Jupiter rules, either long-term, long-distance transportation or legal issues. So on to this week, the week of June 24th. Continuing kind of predictions that are that basically are week-long predictions is that there's continuing, although slightly less than last week, focus on oil, Navy, pharmaceuticals, drugs, etc., religious places as last week. So similarly, some sort of imbalances, problems with shipments, etc. Something else that I pointed out already several times for several weeks in my blog at plastunka.com, where I write all of this up in a written blog, is that sort of any tariffs or any legal decisions that are being, or any contracts that are being signed this week and through about August 11th, may potentially be reversed or revised as when Jupiter turns direct. Another ongoing influences, like I said, 2019 through 2020, with certain periods being kind of emphasized more than others, is the sort of increased probability of major disaster, like a nuclear disaster, mining collapse, and various accidents, government reshuffling, etc. Which reminds me, I forgot to mention that in Germany there were really major protests against, I guess, or at an open pit, one of their large, like, lignite, I think it's called, coal mines, and the authorities were concerned that there would be basically a landslide because of, again, hundreds of people basically storming the mine, and luckily it didn't happen. They were able to contain that, but as I said, in the upcoming times when we will have Mars again squaring and then conjuncting Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which will be again late October, early November 2019, and then March of 2020, we may have similar situation where they actually may result in mine collapses or disasters that involve mining or just somewhere in the mountains or old buildings, etc. In the US, continuing focus on military partnerships and sort of aggressive international negotiations as last week, as well as increased potential for various accidents, fires, etc. Then globally, there's also concern, again, for each country individually about safety, security of food, security of like bank assets, real estate, of literally the land. Is the land secure, be it due to sort of threat of an attack from some other country or some sort of environmental disaster. Continuing prediction for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as I said before, May and June of this year are sort of difficult months for her. I haven't heard anything as far as her health suffering, but it certainly is a difficult time, and again, health-wise or being busy at work. She just haven't really heard what exactly is happening. I thought she may step down even by now. I have not heard that, but it is a continuing prediction. For China, as last week, increased probability of earthquakes, disasters, problems with oil, navy, or pharmaceuticals, just basically some tensions. There was a large, like 5.3, I believe, fairly shallow earthquake in China, but nothing too crazy, but the probability is still there. And new for this week is this is actually a favorable time for China for making plans to enhance their status in the world arena, particularly in the area of like finance, nuclear power, mining, or like cybersecurity or spying, hacking. So something that they may be planning to do this week may actually result in some sort of developments in September of 2019. So they may be making some plans this week, some sort of projects, like maybe approving some sort of law or some tariff, or preparing the path or some logistic for long distance transportation. And what they basically do this week maybe results in September, later in September of this year. So on to specific days of the week. On Monday, I think the market may go up, and there may be increased news about international relations, immigration, laws, tariffs, as well as like chemicals, pharmaceuticals, oil, navy, etc. There may be some concerns about maybe flooding or some excessive sort of torrential rains somewhere, chemical pollution, etc., as well as international tariffs or increased navy activities. But I think overall the mood can be positive and hopeful. However, as I said, if there are any sort of agreements are made this week or through August 11th, they still may be reversed or adjusted, or we may hear about some agreements that are made or some like some basically some, what is it called, sanctions imposed that perhaps their deadline will be somewhere in September, and so therefore in September will be a follow-up action to that. For June 21st, 24th, which 24th is, I guess, just Monday, sort of expiring prediction, is that again increased focus on oil, chemicals, again more so than even the entire month of June, pharmaceuticals and so forth. And originally I thought that we will hear about like a major, of course there was a major change in value, but I thought that the change will be down on the sort of concerns of oversupply. But actually, because of the increased Iran-US tensions, the price went up. So I believe on Monday, the price of oil or futures rather may continue going up. Then for the US, Monday specific prediction is that there may be increased news about banks and financial institutions, like loans, rates, debt, various contracts, and there may be news also about various cyber attacks or some blackmail where basically there may be some secrets, like maybe some deals that basically were done in secrecy, or maybe financial blackmail somewhere. So there may be some concerns about a loss of money, again, some secretive deal, or somebody didn't pay their taxes, or there may be some exposure of some dirty financial deals, or even a threat, especially cyber threat to the financial system. US prediction 24th of June through 26th, there may be increased focus on international relations, partnerships, agreements, immigration, laws, tariffs, as well as military and weapons. So there might be some minor disagreements about what should be done to better protect the country, and or there may be some announcements about funding, so maybe increased funding for the military, or some, major like weapons deal, or sending weapons to help some other country, something along those lines. And there may also be increased news about like sports, racing, engines, computers, and gaming. So again, there may be some sort of a sale or a deal or acquisition, basically like an athlete is signed with like a large bonus or something like that, or some business has sold more cars than expected because of the improved engine design, or some communication company was able to improve again sort of some IT network and infrastructure or design of their device, and again the sales were improved, or it's a part of some deal, maybe acquiring, some manufacturer, and therefore they're improving the design of their device. On Tuesday, I believe the market may possibly continue also going up 60%. June 25, 26, so Tuesday, Wednesday, there may be increased focus on pharmaceuticals, and especially related to like head or injuries like wounds from fires, burns, cut, shots, and or something that is used for women or children, childbirth, as well as just chemicals in generally, or news about somebody being wounded, somebody, obviously some leader, somebody important, and suffering maybe injury from an attack, accident, fire, or explosion, or an athlete potentially being injured, especially in the head. And for pharmaceutical companies, there might be slightly negative news, such as their profits from some drug may go down, or the drug is not performing well, or somebody got hurt, maybe some side effects, and again, something to do with head or something, or some cut, burn, etc. And or especially if a leader is hurt, it will likely be a female leader, or they're receiving, they're on the receiving end of some basically women who are angry, and or there may be some news about safety standards fail, and again it may be concerns or anger from sort of public over some accident and fire injuries, again due to failed safety standards, especially if either angry persons are women, and or women are the ones who are injured. For the US, June 25, 28, especially 26, 27, may see increased focus again on finance, especially debt, loans, rates, etc., as well as just on the stock market, taxes, insurance, and tariffs, nuclear power, mining, recycling, and various power plays, again involving potentially finance, or cyber attacks, and there may be increased military posturing campaigns, attacks of some sort, earthquakes, protests, or news about spying and hacking. And particularly on the 27th of June, there may be announcements about some high importance international negotiations, or just like threatening, sort of tense posturing or discussions involving basically military, or whether or not to proceed with some risky move. On June 26, Wednesday, the overall prediction is that the market will probably go down 65-70%. And the down move may be on concerns about this increased military tensions involving US and some other country, potentially, like I said, Iran or China, and or there may be some concerns about financial area. For the 26th for the US, there may be increased focus on international relations, tariffs, immigration, long-distance travel, and transportation. There may be some announcements about some outcomes of some international negotiations where the leader's position is clarified. I'm guessing it could be Trump, but pretty much anybody, whoever's involved in the negotiations on the US side. So it will be kind of clarified what is this person, this leader is looking to achieve, and what is their stance regarding some international issue, like are they partners with somebody or not? What is their stance on immigration? So on Wednesday, this information may be clarified. And for China, the 26th also seems to be an important day where there may be increased news about the stock market. So some issues again may be cleared up, highlighted, and in particularly sort of savings, real estate, stability, banks, So does this bank have really this much money as they say they do? What exactly, are the assets of a particular company? So some things may kind of be clarified. And as I said, I believe Wednesday may be a down day, so potentially the news may be negative, where maybe some entity like a bank or a large business is not as stable as they say they are, or they don't have as much sort of in savings as they say they do. On Thursday, June 27th, I believe market will also go down, about 70% chance. And again, it could be due to concerns about military tensions involving US and some other country, and or some financial news like about rates, for example, or tariffs coming out of the US. Then on Friday, I believe there's a slight chance that the market will go up, about 55%, just because compared to Wednesday and Thursday, Friday does not look as tense for the US. And the tensions that may have potentially escalate on 26th and 27th may decrease on Friday. And so I'm predicting that the market then may go up after that. And also on my blog at plastunka.com, I post some sort of at a glance, I guess, long-term predictions, where the new ones that I posted this week were for November 22nd through 24th of 2019. There may be increased probability of accidents involving especially airlines or airspace, objects, electric vehicles, explosions or power plants, electric cars especially, or there can be some sudden attacks, sudden loss of power, sudden blackouts like in the social media, or even in the financial industry. So maybe there's like some sort of a cryptocurrency exchange, or there may be like a bank and suddenly there's a loss of access to the money basically. So there may be some problems with that, and there may be definitely some surprising developments in general, or this loss of access or power may kind of come and go suddenly, and so there may be greater than usual volatility in the market due to that, or in general. Let's see. So there, another prediction that I had was for 2020 is that March, approximately 22nd through 31st, may see some increased probability of earthquakes, mudslides, geopolitical changes, problems with sort of established leaders, and various other disasters like violence, cyber attacks, problems with recycling plants, problems with nuclear plants, terrorism, and all kinds of basically bad things. And similar to what we have experienced already in June, but it may potentially kind of come back and be taken to a new level as far as its intensity. And again, that may also be accompanied by blackouts where there's loss of power, loss of services, and in particularly cyber attacks that may involve either, or just loss of, services that involve social media companies or some sort of networks or grids, anything that's like a distributed grid, whether it's for processing information or supply of electricity. And so basically, let's see. And that is, again, the time where we may hear about more sort of government leaders or leaders of large corporations perhaps being replaced or removed or just stepping away. So that's it from me for this week, and I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll come back for more, where you can check out my written predictions at plastunka.com. And have a great week, everyone!